Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you tonight is not what the mainstream media is reporting. It's not what political insiders are whispering, and it definitely is not what Ilhan Omar expected when she woke up this morning. This right here is the moment that everything changes. Now, for months, Omar has pushed the line, testing how far she could go, how much she could say, and how deeply she could provoke without consequences. But suddenly, under President Donald J. Trump here, that line didn't just push back, it snapped. In fact, Trump's response wasn't loud, it wasn't frantic, it wasn't even angry. It was calculated, it was perfectly timed, and it detonated right underneath the one vulnerability that Omar never thought anyone would touch. So now some of you think that you already know the story. The leave the country warning, the TPS bombshell, the backlash after her comments about a conservative's death, the panic inside of her own Minnesota base. But I promise you, most people have absolutely no idea what this combination of moves actually means for Ilhan Omar's political future, her support, her influence, even her seat in Congress. Because tonight, for the first time, we're connecting all the pieces, the comment that lit the fuse, the policy, this particular policy move that hit her base, the backlash that exposed her weakness, and the one strategic move from President Trump that turned this into the worst week of Ilhan Omar's political career. Hit the like button and subscribe, folks. Now, let's get into the moment that sent shockwaves through Washington. Trump's now famous leave the country warning to Ilhan Omar. And listen, this wasn't 2019, Trump tweeting from the outside looking in. This is President Donald J. Trump in office in November 2025, going into December 2025, issuing a message with the full weight of the Oval Office behind it. Now, that changes everything because this time, when he spoke, agencies listened, committees listened, the global stage listened, and Omar, well, she felt it instantly. Now, what triggered this? It traces directly back to her pattern of comments, culminating in the moment that the public finally couldn't ignore. Trump saw the opening. He saw a member of Congress showing contempt toward American families, toward grief, toward the very values that she claims to fight for. And instead of lashing out emotionally, Trump delivered a cold, precise directive. If you hate this country so much, why are you here in Congress representing it? It wasn't a slogan. It wasn't a rhetoric. It was a warning. This is one that carried consequences that Omar never imagined. This entire political earthquake began with a moment that was so shocking that even longtime observers couldn't believe Omar actually said it. A young conservative activist, beloved by millions, father of two, dies suddenly. Instantly, the nation rallies around his grieving family. Even political rivals pause out of basic human decency for Charlie Kirk. But Ilhan Omar doesn't. Instead, she shares content mocking Charlie Kirk, portraying him as a puppet master whose strings finally snapped. People expected silence. She delivered spite. And here's the key. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't misinterpreted. It wasn't a stray tweet. It was calculated imagery designed to belittle someone who wasn't even alive to defend himself. The cruelty hit harder because the nation was still mourning. And the reaction, it was deafening. Even progressive allies, normally ready to defend her at all costs, they refused to touch it. AOC gave a vague, scripted non-response. Bernie Sanders, he did less than what AOC did. Bernie Sanders, he vanished. Editorial boards called her remarks morally vacant. It was the first moment Omar stood alone, fully exposed, with no ideological shield to hide behind. And this right here, this is when the firestorm truly began. Now, before we move on, let me just say something important because what we're talking about tonight isn't just about politics. It's about families. It's about protection. It is about the moments where life hits hard and you suddenly realize that the plan you thought would protect you didn't protect you. And it's a terrible feeling. Knowing a medical bill hurt your family because your Medicare plan didn't protect you. That's exactly why I partner with Chapter. They show you precisely what your Medicare plan doesn't cover, the blind spots, the traps, the parts nobody explains until it's too late. One of our viewers told me, she said, I stopped feeling like a burden. And honestly, that really hit me right there, hit me in the feels, because that's what this is really about. Peace, dignity, and not leaving your family to deal with the fallout. most people are protecting their family right now. Most people are already dialing the phone number at the bottom of your screen right there. Phone number is 909-563-8279, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. Oh, and by the way, Steve Matthews left a comment saying Chapter saved him $75 a month. Steve, really appreciate you sharing that. People don't realize how much relief looks like until they see someone else experiencing it. So appreciate you sharing that, Steve. So the moment Omar's comments hit the internet, the backlash wasn't gradual, it detonated. Social media didn't criticize her, it erupted. Hashtags demanding her resignation trended within hours. Drop a resign down below if you think Ilhan Omar should resign. Drop a deport if you think that she should be deported already. Clips of Ilhan Omar's post-death remarks spread like wildfire. Even people who normally ignore political drama, they're saying, that's a little bit too far. And then something happened Omar never expected. Congress, including members of her own party, they began to distance themselves, not quietly, publicly, strategically. Editorial boards that once hailed her as a groundbreaking voice suddenly called her reaction cruel, reckless, and deeply out of step with American values. CNN anchors pressed her harder than they ever have. MSNBC panels expressed deep concern. Even activists in Minneapolis, her political home turf, expressed outrage. But the most damaging blow wasn't even the noise. It was Omar's face during those interviews. I mean, that shaken voice, the defensive tone, the uncharacteristic uncertainty. Americans saw someone who wasn't standing strong, but someone cracking under pressure. And once the public sees weakness, that's when the sharks swim in. And right when the backlash reached its boiling point, Trump stepped in, but not the way anyone predicted. There was no Twitter tirade. Instead, Trump went silent for exactly 72 hours, deliberate, measured, watching the field shift, watching Omar drown in her own outrage. Then, when the moment was perfect, he struck. A single statement, calm, surgical, devastating. Trump didn't attack her ethnicity. He didn't insult her intelligence. He went straight to the one battlefield that Omar cannot defend: character. He asked, how can someone who shows such disrespect for grieving American families claim to represent American values? That one question wasn't political, it was moral, and it cut straight through every defense Omar tried to mount. Then he followed with another blow, subtle but lethal. Some people are saying we need to look into certain citizenship issues. If that's true, shouldn't we investigate? It was the one thing Omar feared would surface, suddenly thrust into the national spotlight. And in that moment, she knew that this wasn't a fight that she could spin. And just when Ilhan Omar thought that the storm couldn't get any worse, President Trump delivered the policy move that detonated the ground beneath her feet: the Somali TPS announcement. And let me be clear, folks, this wasn't random. This wasn't even coincidental. This wasn't an accidental timing. This was strategic warfare executed by a sitting president who knows exactly where his opponents draw their power. TPS, temporary protected status, has been the backbone of Omar's political support in Minnesota. Thousands in her district rely on it. Many see it as the bridge that allowed their families to build lives in America. And yet, right after her controversial remarks about a conservative's tragic death, right after she alienated independence, right after she showed the country a moment of moral failure, Trump dropped the hammer. He didn't attack her directly. He targeted the foundation of her influence. Overnight, Somali families across Minnesota were asking the same question: is Omar protecting us, or is she putting us at risk? Now, for the first time since taking office, her community wasn't rallying behind her. They were demanding answers. Now, here's the part that nobody saw coming. Not the Democrats, not the media, not even Omar herself, okay? TPS wasn't just a policy issue she championed. It was her political lifeline, her shield, her leverage, her identity within Minnesota's Somali American community. But under Trump's 2025 presidency, that shield became her most vulnerable pressure point. Why? Because the moment Trump touched TPS, Omar was trapped in an impossible political corner. If she fought back aggressively, she looked self-interested, prioritizing her political survival over the broader American immigration system. That narrative, after her remarks about a grieving family, it was poison. If she stayed quiet, she looked weak, unable to protect the very people who elected her. Either choice fractured her base, and Trump knew it. He didn't need to attack her character again. He simply had to highlight her inability to defend the community that she claimed to represent. That's why analysts began calling this the weakest point no one recognized until it was too late. The Somali TPS bombshell didn't just damage Omar politically, it exposed the fragility of her entire political identity. And if you really want to understand the scale of Omar's crisis, look no further than Twitter. Don't look at Congress, look at Minneapolis. Look at Ilhan Omar's district. Look at the people who once treated her like a symbol of their arrival, their voice, their advocate, their champion. Because this time, something broke where it matters the most, at home. It started quietly. Community leaders who normally defended her unconditionally, they're suddenly hesitant. Local organizers privately admitted that they were deeply disappointed. Then came the town hall, the moment that told the whole story. A Somali American mother, the kind of voter who helped Omar rise in 2018, stood up and asked the question that froze the entire room. How can you speak for our community when you show such disrespect for American families who are grieving? Omar tried to respond. She gave a long explanation about systemic oppression, about power structures, about ideological struggle, but the audience wasn't moved. They weren't nodding with her. They weren't cheering. They were staring. They were confused. They were disillusioned. And for the first time ever, Omar wasn't inspiring her base. She was losing them. And once your base begins to crack, the political consequences hit fast, and they hit hard. Omar's campaign finance reports for the quarter didn't just dip, they collapsed. A staggering 60% decline in fundraising sent shockwaves through Democratic strategists nationwide. Major donors, especially the ones who operate quietly behind the scenes, started shifting their money to other progressive candidates who carried less baggage, fewer scandals, and more discipline. Suddenly, Omar wasn't the movement's rising star. She was the liability. And smelling blood in the water, potential primary challengers began circling. Local activists, former allies, even former staffers started floating their names to the press, testing the waters, making phone calls. Some of them had been waiting years for this moment. Party strategists began openly asking, can she even win her seat again? Now, once that question enters the conversation, it's over. The narrative writes itself. The combination of moral backlash, collapsing donations, and growing primary pressure wasn't just damaging. This was politically existential. Omar wasn't just having a bad week. She was fighting for survival. And just when you thought that this entire saga couldn't escalate any further, it took a national security turn. And this is the part that the mainstream media really tried to downplay because it shows the real world consequences of Omar's rhetoric. At the memorial service of the conservative activist that she mocked, Charlie Kirk, an armed man, a former military contractor, showed up claiming that he was there to protect attendees from liberal threats. That alone would have been alarming. But the FBI report made it explosive because the agents discovered that he had been tracking Omar's public statements for months. He had screenshots, printouts, annotations, even timelines. He described her comments, especially the ones after the activist's death, as proof of what he believed was her hostility toward America. Now, this wasn't a supporter. This wasn't an ally. This was someone who was using her words as justification for paranoia. Worse, extremist forums were circulating her comments too, not praising her, but using her statements as propaganda to argue that anti-American elements had infiltrated Congress. Federal law enforcement had to intervene, and suddenly, Ilhan Omar wasn't just dealing with political fallout. She was dealing with national security implications. So while Omar was scrambling to contain the crisis at home, another nightmare was unfolding overseas, and it hit her from an angle she never anticipated. Foreign media outlets, especially in China and parts of the Middle East, seized on her comments about the conservative activist death, Charlie Kirk, and blasted them across their state-run networks. Beijing state media framed it as proof of America's moral decay. Middle Eastern broadcasters used it to claim that the U.S. was fractured beyond repair. Around the world, adversaries waved Omar's words like a trophy, claiming America couldn't even unite around death, grief, or basic dignity. And that's when President Trump stepped in again, not with an attack, but with a statement as sharp as a scalpel. When American politicians speak with hatred toward their own countrymen, our enemies use it as propaganda. That message wasn't aimed at Democrats, it was aimed at the world. And it reminded everyone that under Trump's leadership in 2025, America wasn't going to let hostile nations spin its internal fractures unchecked. For Omar, it was another blow. This was one that amplified the perception that her comments weren't just offensive, they were dangerous globally. Now, behind the scenes, Democrats were in full-blown panic, and you could really feel it. You could see it. The subtle distancing, the carefully worded statements, the sudden silence from people who usually sprint to Omar's defense. But the real story was happening where the cameras couldn't reach. Inside closed-door meetings with Pelosi, Schumer, and DNC strategists who finally realized the truth. Omar was no longer an asset. She was a liability they couldn't afford. Sources very close to party leadership described the mood as urgent and deeply concerned. In private conversations, the top brass was asking questions that they never imagined that they would have to consider. Do we pull her off committee assignments? Do we shrink her public visibility? Is she becoming a threat to vulnerable Democrats in 2026? And more importantly, can she be primaried, and should we allow it? This wasn't ideological disagreement. This wasn't internal family tension. This was political triage. Democratic leadership wasn't just managing Omar anymore. They were managing the damage that she was causing them nationwide. And that, my friends, more than anything, signaled just how far she had fallen. So let's just step back and look at the full picture here, because this is the part most Americans still don't understand. This wasn't a scandal. This wasn't just a bad news cycle. This was the perfect political storm, and every single hit landed on Omar at the exact same time. A grieving family insulted, a national backlash that she couldn't control, a 72-hour strategic strike from President Trump, a TPS bombshell that shook her Minnesota base, a town hall disaster that revealed her slipping support, a fundraising collapse, new primary threats, a national security incident, international humiliation, and her own party scrambling to contain the fallout. Every pillar of her political identity, moral, cultural, ideological, and structural, all of it cracked in the span of a single week. But the biggest factor of all, this is happening under President Donald J. Trump, folks, which means every move that he makes carries institutional authority, media dominance, and global reach. He doesn't just hit back, he changes the terrain. And that is why this week wasn't just bad for Omar. This was the turning point that may define the rest of her political career.